Hey folks, how's it going? RedMaster and welcome back to an episode of Cards and Castles 2, our second video in the early access Steam build. And I know it's taken me a minute to get another video together for you, but there is a reason behind that. I originally wanted to do more of like a overall breakdown of the factions for you guys and highlight some standouts, but with how fast the game is actually changing and evolving, you know, with different patches coming in, cards being cycled out of rotation, well, not rotation, but more of like cycled out of favor. There's just been a lot of movement in the game where it's been hard to pinpoint a good time to make something like that, which doesn't immediately get outdated in, you know, the next week or so. So I decided, you know what, enough is enough. We're going to put that idea to the side for now. We'll come back to that when there's a bit more stability in the amount of patches that we're seeing becomes, you know, less and less frequent. And instead, we're going to focus on some more fun gameplay aspects, and in turn, our first deck list actually for Cards and Castles 2, which is something that is going around right now, something that actually might be very prevalent in the next few days, so that you are playing on the build right now and maybe need something to kind of refresh yourself. This might be a stronger list for you to grab, at least in these early moments. Again, I don't know how long patches are going to come and go in this game, at least in this early access build, so this might be only around for a week or two. Who knows? I just think it might be really strong, and for you to take a look at it and maybe even get some wins and improve your rank with it. Who knows? So without further ado, let's go ahead and hop into today's deck list. Let's take a look at the Ninja Viking Swarm. Alright, and here it is, our Viking Ninja Aggro Swarm that we honestly did not make ourselves. Have to give credit where credit's due. This list came mostly from a user named Sigma Grinder, pieced together from a couple of matches that we played with him using this list. I filled in some gaps that I was missing with my own additions, but we'll talk about those when we get there, and why I think some of my changes still are good for the deck. And if you don't have maybe some of the options I have, talk about some substitutions briefly. But let's go ahead and break down what this deck is supposed to do and how it's supposed to win. Alongside that, how some of the recent changes to the game with the recent patch has actually helped with that as well. Let's start with that point, I guess the patch boosting part, because probably the big focal point of this deck has to be the fact that you can build a giant berserker, which is taking a new spotlight thanks to its recent change, being granted the overwhelm, which, if you don't already know, it's when extra damage from combat spreads out and hits anything else on your opponent's side or any enemies on the board, including castle, the supply depot, etc. So obviously with token decks now, they have an extra win con, which is to build up berserker to a crazy high amount and then send him in, deal damage, and watch a huge amount and potentially game-ending damage fly across the board. It's been done, and it's scary for sure. Now, that is only one part of this, though. Berserker, obviously, your big funny boy, but that's not actually how you're also winning games primarily as well. This is a deck that focuses on the tokens and making sure that tokens are actually running rampant and potentially ending the game. Things like Hidden in the Walls, Nunchuck Nun, and the recently changed Beastmaster as well, all contributing to the swarm element of this deck. You want to bring out a lot of creatures earlier to essentially just start going ham on the castle, spawning them in and then playing things like Freya or the Battle Cry, which gives them that +1/+1, or the Frog Prince. It keeps units big, scary, and hitting for a big damage. And then if you, of course, go into the later stages of the game, you have a extra closer in Friends of the Dragons. This is a very slept-on legendary. A lot of people don't really talk about it too much, but if you're playing a Swarm deck, definitely consider it. It is where you can bring out an extra Drake for each of your units on the board. So this, of course, produces a crazy amount of additional units on top of your existing Swarm to produce just a game-ending board state for your opponent, with how much creatures you've amassed on the board, not to mention how strong some of them are from things like Frog Prince and Battle Cry. So, of course, that is our end goal. We want to be able to swarm our opponent before they can really start going off the ground. And to do that, and to complement this as well, I think what this deck has a nice amount of is disruption, or ways that we can interrupt your opponent very early on in the game, to throw off their combos or disrupt what their defense is, to really allow your units to start chipping in and dealing a lot of damage. Things like the Cosmic Equation, Cockatrice, Dissipate, Master at Arms even, all fantastic tools at just throwing off your opponent's game into your advantage. And of course, at that point, you can continue to keep chipping with some existing cards that you've maybe thrown out very early. Say that you have a Beastmaster, you want to charge him in, but now there's some enemy defenses in the way. Equation, Cockatrice can start chipping away at that defense, setting all units HP to 1 alongside blasting with Cockatrice. And of course, Equation I do want to bring up because some people might be scared to say, you know, oh, why do I want to set all of my units to 1 too? Your units are also quite small in the HP department here. You can afford to move their health around to 1. It's not going to be a huge deal. Plus, some might have already taken damage and won't really be affected too much by the Equation swap here, if you will. So don't be afraid to use Cosmic Equation on your own units in this deck. There are a lot of smaller guys. And you're really focused on that attack stat more than the defense, the HP. So, you know, you use that to your advantage, and don't be afraid to wipe out early board states with this card. But on top of that, you know, I would say Dissipate's probably going to be your best friend in terms of disruption. This card is absolutely killer, sending back an opponent's unit, especially when it's in the early game. They have so little resources to spend. You might be lucky and catch one of the big Guardians off the board, having to replay that and maybe even take up all the prime Guardian spaces anyways. So very, very dangerous tools that the ninjas have at their disposal for early disruption and cleanup, for you to really start just hamming and going in, hitting face, and potentially ending the game with your, whether it be a big Berserker or your other swarm tools like the Nunchuck Nun, Hidden in the Walls with Frog Prince, Battle Cry, Freya, all that stuff, you know, works. You want to clear the way for all of your combos to do so, and of course Dissipate is a great tool to do that. But alongside that, what other cards are we running in this deck? What else do we have? Let's go ahead and break down card by card, give you guys a brief explanation, as well as some changes that I have made to the deck, but I don't know if they're actually in Sigma Grinders list, so we're going to be explaining why I've added some of these extra cards in as well. So start over here, Omega Strike coming in as our first card here. Very nice for early disruption. 2 damage to 2 HP or less, can clear off a lot of potential targets, as well as even if you decide to weaken something with, say, Cockatrice or any of your small tokens, this could be a final blow. Also works on Castle. The target includes Castle, so if you need that final bit of extra damage on the Castle, maybe surviving by 1 HP, Omega Strike can clean up the game too. So a very dangerous spell that I think a lot of people have overlooked, and maybe might even make a surgence here with how nasty it is. Following that up, Cockatrice, this thing has popped up all over the place. The Warcry dealing 1 damage can be great at dealing with some smaller creatures. And in an era where we might be running against more token decks, having the instant removal against those small creatures can be huge. So Cockatrice coming in as our early 1-drop, but also just more of a disruption too, to also pair along with Cosmic Equation. Again, this is a very universal removal tool for the entire board. Pair this with Cockatrice, and you can start blasting things across the board very easily. Battlecry coming in as one of our big swarm buffers. The 1/1 for all units very much makes things scarier. You can do the 2 summon if you want to in the early game if you don't have anything else, but primarily try to hold this for your swarm buffing. Dissipate, which we talked about before, but very good disruption tool. Master at Arms, the same thing. You really want to be utilizing the damage to kill something rather than weaken your own units. But hey, it's not that bad if you have to use this on maybe, say, a Nunchuck Nun, where you can afford to take some damage in turn for, you know, wiping out a 3/3 or dealing some more damage. So, Master at Arms, more so disruption, but hey, still a great card. Owl is in here to pair alongside all of the rat spawning that we're doing, or additional token spawning as well. This can of course pull us a card for free when you throw it on the battlefield. It's free cycle, and in an age where you might run into Cockatrices, I've seen mischievous imps running around. Play this turn 2 when they have an imp turn 1. Boom, you have a free card and a bigger body than imp. So Definitely a strong inclusion here. Rat King is probably the first inclusion that I have made to the deck. I threw it in as additional swarm targets for Freya, but I'm not sure if Rat King is in the original list. He's a legendary, so you don't have to include him if you don't have him. There are some other options, other swarm things. Infestation is another great tool that you can use alongside, or subbing for the Rat King. Putting the rat inside the deck as well as generating your own pretty much does the same thing. You just have the extra body with Rat King. Or even so, if you play Hidden in the Walls, you play Rat King, spawn a 4/4 to hit in the back. Again, just adding on to the aggression of the swarm very early on. So that's why Rat King takes a spot here, but you might be able to sub him out for Infestation if you don't have yourself a Rat King. Following that, you've got more of our swarm producers. I'm going to classify these all as very swarm-like creatures. They all do the same thing. Generate extra bodies to fuel the swarm. Beastmaster, Hidden in the Walls, and Nunchuk Nun. These three are very dangerous, especially now with the changed Beastmaster. Summoning multiple beasts alongside of him can be very dangerous because he's got quite a range of options. Wolf, Bear Hug, Hawk, Battle Squirrel. Very, very dangerous lineup, plus probably some more that I'm forgetting. But yes, he's in here to kind of further fuel our swarm. Freya is another inclusion that I made to the deck. I don't know if it's in the original list, but I figured with all the swarm and something that we're doing, it wouldn't be bad to include Freya to make them even more scarier. Sure, you might lose control with the Berserk, but hey, you want to be hitting things anyway. And if you are smart about it, you can position cards to hit certain targets. That's how people kind of mastered Berserk and made it more powerful than I think it was intended to be. But Freya doing some fun stuff, adding to the swarm power with her universal attack and Berserk stat. Following that, you've got Berserker, who we talked about before, but this is, again, another star of the show. The overwhelm that he can generate from hitting or all the other token interaction happening is very big, very important. And you can maybe even end games if you can play your cards right with him. Just hitting for massive overwhelm damage is incredibly scary. Frog Prince as our 1/1, or not 1/1, our +1 attack booster. Again, another global to pair alongside our Battle Cry. If you're playing Swarm, you kind of have to have Frog Prince in here. It's kind of a no-brainer to include things that make your Swarm stronger, so Frog Prince is definitely in here. Got Sakaya. This was, I believe, a card on the free track, so you should have this legendary, but also very relevant. The charge is important for taking out some scary threats or immediately. Also, the +2/+2 can be very relevant because you have a lot of cheaper things you're playing in this deck. So maybe pairing it alongside of a, say, Snowy Owl and Rat King. You've instantly made this card a now 7/7 instead of a 3/3. So you got to see how fast this card grows and with how many cheap things are inside of our deck. We have the potential to make a very big Sakayuna in case things get nasty. Next, you've got Wyvern Rider, another recent change, who is in here for similar reasons as Sakaya. The charge element, pretty much, and also spawning that Frost Drake, creating an extra charged unit to help clear off threats on the board can be very crucial and very important. So, Wyvern Rider is definitely taking a spot here, very, very important. And finally, Friends of the Dragons. More like the extra swarm sauce. This is going to produce a lot of drakes on top of your existing dog pile of early units. And in that case, if maybe you can pull this off, then that might just be the game right there. Usually, this drake swarm is going to be very hard to deal with unless they are running mass removal. Things like Man the Cannons, Blaze, End of Days, which we're not seeing a lot of right now, to be quite fair. I think the Pirates are still running Man the Cannons, but we're not seeing a lot of Crusaders right now, so End of Days might be out of the picture. And you have Blaze, which people prefer Dragon's Fire as their big Warlock spell, so you might be able to catch them off guard with that, but just be wary that, if you're running across those colors, Friends might not be the end-all for yourself. You might have to keep watch of any big removal still out there. But with that pretty much goes over our entire deck list. This is honestly probably one of the strongest decks that I've played myself personally since picking up the game in early access. Well, not in early access. Yeah, in early access actually. When the game had gone public with everyone, that's when I thought this deck was good, and it still is good. I don't know what I'm talking about anymore. I'm rambling. Let's go ahead and actually show you guys more gameplay of this deck, though, to get a feel and showcase just how powerful it is. And honestly, one of the great things about Cards and Castles too, and that I'm looking at this, is the ability to replay your previous matches. So we get to eliminate the weird waiting times that I've been notorious to showcase during gameplays. So with that being said, folks, let's go ahead and jump into our first match here. I'm going to showcase the one against Archangel first. Excuse me. We'll get our perspective here, just kind of show you guys the thought process. So we're going to obviously swipe away some of those bigger cards here. We don't need them early on. We're looking for our very cheap stuff. We pulled a nice card here. Snowy Owl on the turn 1 can be very good for our opponent who might be playing cards like Mischievous Imp. So here you go, the example that I gave you before. We get the Imp going, get himself a random 2-cost spell, and we'll respond with a Snowy Owl. Not only providing a bigger unit to block the Imp, but also getting that free card draw, so that way we don't, lose the hand advantage, or we get to keep up in the hand. Our opponent will play a trap, which in Warlock Ninja might be the backdraft, is what I'm going to assume. So in that case, we'll try to summon a 2-cost, but the Battle Cry to avoid that backdraft, which I thought was pretty neat. And now we get a 3/2 Hawk, which can now swarm our enemy, but unfortunately the exposed weakness comes in. Most likely a spell that he got from one of his random RNG pools, which is fine. We'll go and hit with the Owl. I spawned the Berserker here knowing that we're into a backdraft. I don't want to waste the Frog Prince, so instead I'll opt to sacrifice the Berserker. Now, I could have also used the Master at Arms. I wanted to hold it for moments like this, where we now have a Master at Arms hitting the Hassan Legionnaire and the Omega Strike to finish it. Again, clearing off the board, and that right there is showing the disruption of this deck. Being able to disrupt the enemy's early to mid-game completely, and that way you have free range with your tokens to hit the board. He'll, of course, go into another Imp, drain life our Master at Arms, play another trap, which I assume is going to be a second copy of Backdraft. In that case, I say fine. Play the Snowy Owl to intercept the Backdraft, but it's transcribed, so we'll get a copy of the Owl instead, which, no big deal. And now we'll throw the Frog Prince out here for even more damage from our creatures that are on the board. Snowy Owl chipping for 3 instead of 2, accumulating that damage over time. Opponent will play a Witch Hut to, again, generate more spells. Actually, it's a good play here with the Dark Mirror, which I found annoying. He is going to get some value off of that, losing one of our owls to the Frog Prince trade here, but ultimately not losing too much. I figured now's a safe time to play the Beastmaster that we drew, so we're going to go ahead and increase the power of our Swarm just a little bit more here. Opponent plays Dragon's Fire. This is going to do a good job clearing out most of that Swarm. Thankfully did not hit our Frog Prince, though. So Frog Prince still free to roam around and hit for some nice damage. We'll dissipate our Beastmaster that way so we can reset our Swarm here to make it, I guess, stick better or keep it alive or however you want to say it. We want to essentially reset our Swarm, and dissipate Beastmaster is a fine way to do so. We do see the Badger here as a replace to kind of stop my impending Swarm, but here's where the Wyvern Rider comes in. Battle Cry to make sure that the Wyvern Rider can kill the Badger, clear that away. Spawn the Ice Drake, pop the Mage in the back, and move in with the rest of our units here. Bear Hog, Beastmaster, Bear Hog, all chipping in for some damage, and of course hitting the Hovel Supply Depot with that Peasant that's stuck up top there. No, they really have that impact the game, so we'll just hit into the Depot. Even though we're not going for Depot most of the time with this deck, when we can get the Depot, we'll take it. But at that point, our opponent surrenders. Nothing more he can do to close out the game. And that is our Game 1 victory with the Swarm. Very dangerous, as you saw there. The ability to use Battle Cry to completely shift the tide and create some big overpowering creatures in combination with the already existing Frog Prince, as well as the disruption that happened within that game. We saw the Omega Strike, the Master at Arms. We didn't see the Dissipate too much. We saw the Wyvern Rider and how that could be a form of disruption if played correctly. Just a lot of elements coming together that really provide problems for your opponent. But with that being said, Game 1 is in the bag. What does Game 2 have to offer us? Next up, we're going to go against Lucas Zombro here. I actually had 2 matches against Luca here. I think I'm going for this one, because I think if I know which one it is, it'll highlight a point. But regardless, we'll go ahead and jump right in. And we see we have the Cosmic Equation and Dissipate. Again, great disruption tools that we'll need, as well as my Swarm starters with the Rat King and the Beastmaster. Unfortunately, both of us don't have a turn 1 play, so we'll kind of take things easy for now. He's setting a trap, which is fair for ninjas. Could be the Kabuki Mask or the Bato Jutsu. We'll throw the Rat King in response to, again, start building our Swarm here. He's going to go for the Hunter. Hunter's going to shuffle some Beasts in his deck. Now, Luca was playing a very Beast-focused deck at the time. Nice little Ninja, Druid combo there to create some charge in his beasts and some big beasts and all that. But that deck's going to take time that he might not have. As you can see here, Beastmaster coming in, spawning the rabbit, which goes for the castle with that berserk, as well as the bear hog, which will just kind of sit and chill for now, as the hunter gets to work on clearing some of our smaller rats, which, fair, he does have an attack, so why not use it? Now we're going to go ahead and swipe into some things. You see, we're going to focus really on the castle here, making sure that he's not at a lot of life to do a lot of things, because this is a very early swarm-based aggro. We're going to go ahead and summon the hidden in the walls while we have most of the buildings that we're going to see on the game, I guess. So we'll do that. We're going to go ahead and hit Rabbit in. Rabbit's going to hit into the bear, trigger the Kabuki mask, summon the living vines, which is fine. I mean, we can't control the rabbit anyway, but this is a good point to play that Dissipate. Dissipate, of course, clearing the way for us to kill the hunter and continue our aggression, as you can see with our small swarm here, hitting in with all of the rats plus the Beastmaster. Unfortunately, no way to make these guys a bit bigger, but hey, that's fine. We're going to go ahead and hit the Beastmaster to the castle here. I was trying to reposition to avoid the Guardian aura from Bear, but then I remembered that he doesn't have Bear, he has Vines. The Owlbear going to go ahead and take a step in here, which is fine. We're going to dissipate that again. Just setting him back even more, and at that point I believe the game is over. We do have the swarm here, peasants coming in, hitting in, and the Omega Strike to finish the game. So that game pretty much is going to be our highlight into why disruption is very important. The things like Dissipate you saw there were very crucial in setting him back multiple turns, which when already faced down with a small swarm of creatures like this is very hard to come back from. You're accumulating a lot of damage to the point where, hey, if you're not careful or you have no responses, you're just going to probably lose outright. So a very scary demonstration of just how prevalent the swarm elements are in this deck. But let's go ahead and wrap up with game number 3 to show you guys what else this deck can do. Alright, and our last game is against my old friend Derek Dudge here. Always good to play against Derek. Love this man to death. But we're going to go ahead and jump right in to show you guys, again, what this deck has, what it can do. And we're going up against the Warlock Pirate, which is not something that we see every day. But, you know, sure, we'll take it. Maybe some sea monster stuff, who knows. But he'll play the Imp first, which, of course, is our free prompt for the Owl. The Owl gets his value off of the Imp just being there. And we, of course, provide a bigger body. He's going to incinerate the Owl, though, which I thought was a bold choice to waste a burn card on something as small as Owl. But, you know, this is a Warlock deck. Warlocks do have a lot of burns. So, in turn, we'll summon the Nunchuck Nun and pass on there. We'll allow the Imp to continue just existing in the back here. No need to worry about him. But with that, no trap. Turn 4, we're going to play our Frog Prince down, and we'll make these Nuns a little bit bigger for some better value. Use one to clean up the Imp in the back. Use the other to hit the Peasant up front. And move in the third to deliver that 2 damage to the castle. Again, starting that swarm damage. Starting that damage accumulation, if you will. He plays the Legionnaire here, which honestly was a tough call to try and intercept. But I go for the Cockatrice into the Nunchuck Nun. I will give him a card here. I don't mind too much. I want to save the Cosmic Equation for when there might be bigger threats on the board. And we still have the Hidden in the Walls to play anyway. So we're going to play that instead to keep the pressure on. Derek will dissipate my Frog Prince, unfortunately, and set down a trap in response. Now, I believe this trap was to be backdraft, so I had to figure out how I wanted to play this exactly. And here's where Master Arms can do some funny things. We see Master Arms get played up at the top corner. I did run to the backdraft knowingly, so we're going to lose not only the Master, but maybe a couple of tokens, that Rat and the Nunchuck Nun. But hey, we have another one, so we'll leave that buff onto the remaining Nunchuck Nun to make it a 4 damage unit, while also keeping our Frog Prince on the board active and providing a global buff to the remaining units. So maximizing the amount of damage we can push onto this board, which is quite beautiful. And I already put Derek, again, more at a disadvantage. Go for Witch's Hut here to choose some spells, see what he can pull. Go for the Books play to get some draw. Soul Steal my Nunchuck Nun to provide a little bit of a boost to that flying book and pass back to us. We're going to go ahead and use our Cockatrice here, hidden in the walls once again. We'll play the Rat King actually on one of these rats here to create a bigger presence in that 4/4 on face immediately. And then, of course, just replay the Rat and the Peasant again, just putting down more swarm value. He'll draw into the Dragon's Fire, which, again, kind of a bit of an issue there. You'll see it's able to disrupt our Swarm a little bit, but ultimately it didn't matter. We still had lethal on the board anyways, with all of the additional units. Cockatrice, Rat, and Peasant cleaning up. If we lost the Frog Prince there, it might have been a game that we had to keep on playing, but thankfully with how many targets were on the board for Dragon's Fire, and with Frog Prince not losing any extra HP during the game, the chances that he was going to die were fairly low, and we saw that illustrated quite well. He was not able to kill the Frog Prince, but instead killed a lot of our back stuff that ended up kind of staying there for most of the game. So, again, showcasing just how prevalent Swarm is and how it's really dangerous. A very fast accumulation of units can mean the end for you if you don't have proper responses or are not careful. Even the case with Derek here, we saw that he had the Dragon's Fire, which is a great way to deal with Swarm, dealing 1 damage to a unit, and then of course spreading out the damage to all these other smaller targets. A great thing to do, but unfortunately just wasn't able to get the proper dice roll with that, I guess you could say, and hit a couple of other units that just were a part of the Swarm. So, yes, very, very dangerous stuff. But ultimately, I think a great point for us to close out this video here. Folks, Ninja Aggro, very, very dangerous, and I hope these games are able to showcase just why that is. Alright folks, and with that being said, that's going to close out our first deck list video for Cards and Castles 2. I hope you guys enjoyed what our Ninja Viking Aggro Swarm could do. Very, very dangerous stuff here for sure, and this is definitely going to be a deck that I expect to be prevalent over the next few days or weeks before the incoming patch inevitably changes it. We are in, thankfully, a great time for this game where there's constant changes and adjustments being made. So things are kept fresh and running and smooth. You know, a lot of variety happening, which is something that I think is very important for games like this. You want to have fresh takes, fresh matchups, and what better way to do that than throwing some changes here and there into the fire. But if you want to play this while you have a chance to, I highly recommend doing it. It's going to be a deck that maybe could earn you a couple of ranks and push you out of maybe silver or gold if you're stuck in any of those right now. And yeah, if you want to grab it, feel free. I mean, I'm going to export the deck list. The code will be down below in the description of the video. Remember, if you are playing this game, you can import decks now with that code. So it'll be easier for you to copy deck lists or replicate templates if you want to mess around and modify for yourself. Feel free to do that. Of course, again, code in the description below. But with that being said, I think I'm going to close it out here. So, folks, if you did enjoy, be sure to leave a like. If you did, be sure to share with your friends and subscribe if you're new or haven't done so already, so you can show your support here to the channel and help us grow on the platform after all. And, of course, spread the word about Cards and Castles 2 as well. This game is free on Steam, but will be coming to mobile. Again, no details on that, but when there is more, we will share them with you. And, yeah, I think that's going to be it for me for now. So, folks, until next time, stay gaming.